Hello, and welcome to the Table and Well podcast. I'm Tennyson.
And I'm Janelle. Thank you for joining us as we discuss topics and give practical tools that help you live, grow, and be in healthy, joy-filled relationship with God, yourself, and others.
For more information and resources, or if you're looking for coaching, connection, and community, please visit tableandwellco.com. We hope you enjoy this podcast. So thank you for joining us today for the Table and Well podcast. This is episode number 17 of season 2, Stories from the Table. And as always, guys, we're excited that you're with us today. So please feel free to download and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite listening platform. And if you're watching on YouTube or you want to watch on YouTube, you can do that at our YouTube channel, which is Table and Well Co. So today, you guys are going to be listening to the conclusion of our conversation with Richard and Carolyn Hyde, our good friends from Israel. And again, guys, if you haven't listened to the previous 2 podcasts, I encourage you to go back and listen to those because they're chocked full of stories and they are incredible storytellers. And there's so much promise and so much joy and hope and wonder and mystery and excitement and craziness in all of their stories. They're very, very good. And at the core of it all is the table from these stories and how much the table is intertwined in everything that they do, how much it is a huge part of who they are in their culture. And today is no different. You hear more stories. We'll talk a little bit more about just what the table is. And then you also get to listen today to their answer to the question that we've based this entire podcast around, which is the table to me is, and their answers really they've been answering through the entire of our conversation in the past 2 podcasts and this one, but they give some very specific things and some very interesting answers too, that I might say. So I want to encourage you guys just to keep your ears wide open, continue to listen, enjoy the conclusion of our conversation with Carolyn and Richard Hyde as they tell us their story from the table. Listening to your story, all your stories too. One of the things, actually, one of our, I think, first or second podcast of the series, we had talked about how being at the table, you actually do more listening than talking because the way it's designed and how we've designed it, but even it seems like how even in the Jewish culture and with the things that you have incorporated in, there's way more listening and attuning and connecting than there is actual talking. Because you're
not exactly.
Let me back. What I mean by that is you are intentionally listening.
They're all talking at the same time.
Yeah, in Jewish
culture, that's true. All right,
true. Nobody's listening. Everyone's talking.
I'll pull that back all the way and say no. But it's this.
But it seems like you're bringing that aspect.
Yeah. Yes, that's the point.
That's
the point. Like what you're talking about, the rhythms. When you set the things up in the rhythms, and people, everybody has a word, and everybody, can listen. When you set it up that way, then it's beautiful. But it is tricky otherwise, because otherwise everybody's talking and they're pushing their own agendas.
Yeah. Actually, when we first started Luke 10. And we started learning the rhythms and everything. What really hit me was this. I could relate to it as a Jew because everybody's listening. But the difference is the way I grew up is everyone would sit around the table and everyone would talk at the same time and nobody's listening. With Luke 10, everybody's talking, but everybody's listening.
That's good.
Much better.
Yes,
it is. Yeah. And that's,
because then everyone's actually heard too.
Exactly.
I mean, we're all talking to be heard. And knowing that that's happening.
That part of Jewish culture still drives Richard crazy. I can participate in it. I have no problem.
Right.
Like,
I've got this.
Over each other. We're all finishing each other's sentences.
But I spend the whole time just sitting there. Okay, I'm trying to get in.
Jump in.
As person's best. I'm going to cut them off right at the end. But just not he beat me again.
Oh man, that guy beat me to it.
I mean, you can't get in, man. So sometimes I just give up.
Here's a story.
I love it.
So we were invited to meet at a restaurant and sit around the table with a group from, I think some were from Africa and some were from Europe, of Christians. And Chaim was there and we were there. So Chaim and I were the only 2 Jews there.
Okay.
So he and I were doing all the talking and interrupting each other and sharing and stuff. And at one point, one of the African men said, wow, Jews sure do talk a lot. And Chaim didn't even bat an eye. He said, well, how do you think the gospel got spread?
Wow.
So there was a reason why God chose the Jewish people.
I see.
This. I see that.
I love that. That's great.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a time and a place for everything. So there you are. Exactly.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
So, Richard, I'm curious. We've actually had the privilege of having you at our table.
Yeah.
God has, just even in meeting you, woven us together so beautifully. And it wasn't by chance, but it sure does appear to be just so unique and unusual that you guys would live in Israel, and we will have seen you. We've seen you, I don't know, hugged your necks 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
And the Lord originally, when we met, brought you right here to Greenville, and we went to some stranger's home and walked in to meet you guys, and then got to spend time with you in groups together, and just so much beautiful time together. But I'm curious, because just in September of this last year, you got to join us at our table. And what was that like for you? How was that experience? And what was maybe different or unique about it? That maybe you brought back with you.
Yeah.
It was, to tell you the truth, it was really life-changing to me, because, the thing is, we've all 4 been in with Luke 10. But it's the idea is like, practically, how do you carry those things out? How does it actually happen? And that's what I loved about, what you guys are doing there. That you had the table in the kitchen, and then in the dining room, then you had one downstairs. How many do you have now?
Still 3.
Just the 3.
Still 3. Yeah. And then, starting with the appreciation stories and the checking in, and all the kind of dynamics we've been talking about, begin to happen. It was really beautiful. So I could really see, how you could have a congregation could function that way, just with and it would be just, so beautiful without, all the planning. And I mean, where Yeshua's really is the leader. And then I know afterwards we talked about, maybe having a scripture or something where people can meditate on for a period of time, and then come back together and then share that. Have you tried that yet?
Yeah, actually,
we do it more in real time than ahead of time. Still, we haven't quite instituted ahead of time.
No, not ahead of time, but we do at the table. So after we finish the check-in piece, then we'll read a scripture, and then that we're all in sync on, and then we say, just to prepare our hearts for that, and then we go into the living room, and then we will meditate on that scripture, and then we take about 5 minutes, and we just listen around that, and that people share what they have heard the Lord saying to them regarding that scripture. So 3 simple questions. We ask them, what does this scripture show you, or what does it tell us about who God is? What does the scripture say about who we are? And then what's our response, or what does he want us to do in response to this scripture? And so we listen around those 3 questions and let people just share openly.
And that is beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah. Do you have any stories about that or anything? How is that?
We've done it in a variety of formats. And I think what is so beautiful about it is that it's like this beautiful mosaic of understanding, where the way that scripture spoke to me right now, where I'm walking in my paradigm, the way that I can see is sometimes, I think in the human experience, we can see what we can see, for whatever reason. And what's beautiful about it is that I get to see this through your eyes and your eyes and your eyes and your eyes. And actually each one, and we talk a lot about this, about how we get to see God in multifaceted relationship.
Yeah.
That the way that he's speaking to your heart right now through these same 10 words, and how actually that really resonates with me, but I couldn't see it from that angle, even though that is my experience as well. And And so I would say we just have had repeated experience of that, of this beautiful fabric that kind of gets woven together over that short time together of him speaking almost multiple dialects.
Yeah.
The way that you bring the Hebrew understanding to us, Carolyn, it's similar to that of gosh, I didn't know it that way. I understood it this way, but I didn't understand it that way. And that understanding now brings that to life in a new way.
Yeah. And I would say it's been, those have been some of the best quote unquote sermons that we've ever listened to, because it is this community of people that are listening to Jesus and then sharing, like Janelle was saying, from their own experience, from their own paradigm, from what the Lord has downloaded specifically to them about any of those questions. I don't remember the scripture, but I remember at one I did one, and we were going around, and we get to this one guy, and he basically said, he's like, he was a car salesman, or not. He went to auctions, and anyway, but for him, whatever, I wish I could remember the scripture, but it totally changed in that moment how he was going to address or approach buying and selling cars to people.
Wow.
Like in that moment, he was like, he just said, I've been doing this whole thing for me to make money, and because that's my livelihood. He said, but after reading this and just meditating on it, it's like, no, like I'm going to do this so I can bless other people, not so it's just to make me money, but like I want to go find the best thing I can for you.
And out of that, I will be blessed. I can't remember the scripture either, but yeah.
But it was like, wow. And if everybody was like, well, we'll buy a car from you. Let us know. Like, I mean, if that's what, like, if your heart's there, but it was that kind of thing. And then for us too, it blessed us, because we're like, wow.
In real time watching scripture.
Because you're going to remember it. It's a scripture. You're there. You spent maybe 5 minutes, meditating on it, and then everybody's talking about the same thing. You're going to take something from that. It's powerful.
Good.
And it's been really neat too, because like someone will say something, and it's like this a lot whenever you have those times where someone says something, and then like you heard something, but you're like, that's kind of weird. I don't know if that's actually, or you get an impression about something, and then somebody says something and you're like, oh, that's why. Okay. Yeah. So
maybe I'm not crazy, so maybe I am hearing him.
Yeah.
And so it actually solidifies, isn't the word I'm looking for, but affirms in you, that confirms in you that, oh, I am hearing, I am listening, and what I heard actually is from the Lord. And it made sense to me, but to say it out loud was like, I don't know. And so you get to see that watching in that moment too.
People's courage to speak what the Lord is speaking to their heart, and watching
it encourages them that they're actually hearing God.
Yep.
And so that's
and
powerful.
that I can understand scripture, that you can speak to me through scripture if I just quiet long enough to listen. And it applies to me. That's so good. And I think what's beautiful about it too, going back to appreciation, because I think these are tied together, even check-ins tied in here, but we forget that our experience, this human experience, is very similar. Like what the Lord is doing in you guys, he's writing a story for us all, and it's all interwoven. And listening to people's appreciation is that like, oh, the goodness of the Lord in your life equals the goodness of the Lord in my life. And what he's speaking to you in this scripture is actually for me too, even if it's not like, oh, that's exactly the answer I needed, or exactly the promise that I needed from the Lord, but it's the presence of the truth in our life that's being lived out in and through you that also gets to be mine, because that is the greater family. He is the Father of us all. And getting to hear that shared around the table is such an encouragement. In all of those aspects.
And it's beautiful in real time to see it happening in real time, to see the confirmations and the affirmations and the connections that are literally taking place in real time and right in front of your eyes. And you can see it, physically see it, and spiritually feel it. And it's amazing.
Jesus is leading.
He's leading. One of my favorite things about the time that you were at the table, Richard, was you had brought some friends, or some friends had invited.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly how that happened, but a couple had come with you.
Yes.
And then someone else had come to the table as well. And it was the first time for both of them.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so fun to watch them minister to each other. Complete strangers from two opposite sides of the United States, you there from Israel, and just watching people love one another well with the love of the Lord and with his eyes and with his voice. I think that's one of my favorite things that happens around the table. Even just back to what you were talking about, Carolyn, where your mother would invite in strangers of sorts. And I think there's something to be had there, that we've talked a lot about this at the table. Like, we could close the table and keep the same X amount of people, and that's just become this thing. But I love the reminder, even in the Jewish culture, of there's always room for someone else, someone we didn't plan for, someone we may not even know yesterday, but today there's a seat for them here. And getting to watch it, particularly at the table that you were at, people who were strangers prior to that moment became caregivers of one another in his presence, and in their presence for one another, in the listening, and in the sharing.
Yeah, it's amazing how intimate it can get in just a short amount of time when people are transparent and vulnerable.
Yeah. And there's time and space for that.
I just thought of this, you mentioned you bring a scripture and you meditate on one. So we just heard this one the other day. I love the insights that the native-born Hebrew speakers bring. So you can use this one in Psalm 27:11. It says, "Horeni Adonai darkecha." So it's in the English, it's translated, "Teach me your ways, O Lord." But actually, Horeni, and when you say your Horim are your parents. So what it's basically saying is, parent me, Lord.
Wow. That's powerful.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you could meditate on that one.
Yeah.
As God the Father.
Raising up spiritual mothers and fathers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Parent me, oh Lord.
I love that.
I do too. That's
perfectly timed as well.
Yes. Yeah, it is.
Beautiful.
It is beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Wow. Well, I want to go ahead and just ask our question that we kind of, as I said, this is stories from the table. So, and just hearing what the table means to you. So either it doesn't matter, like you've been at multiple tables, you host tables, you have your own tables. So Carolyn, what does the table to you is? Like, what are some words that come to mind when we say, what is the table to you? The table to you is what?
Life, joy, family, fellowship.
Yeah. And those are all things.
Logical.
Yeah. Interesting.
It just makes sense.
I was going to say, expound on that. We've talked about the other ones, but and I'm sure those are all things that you've experienced at the table, the life and the joy. I like logical.
That's fun.
Yeah, and it's fun.
Tell us more about that.
Yeah, tell us more about that one.
Well, just in the sense that it makes sense. Like, of course you would do that. I mean, you wouldn't even think of not doing that. If you invite people over, there's going to be a meal and you're going to sit at the table together.
Yes.
But if you have the skills, it can be a total different experience. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. There's a whole nother level, but I think there's something to even be said, even in the logic of it. I think I was surprised way back when we first started recording Stories at the Table. Miranda shared, this is your table is the only table I have to sit at. She's a single woman.
She's got roommates.
And she's roommates, but she doesn't sit at a table on any regular basis except for here. And just the reminder of that it seems so logical, but yet is missing. It's one of those pieces that powerful. Is really missing.
Yeah, she sent us a stat. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I think it was like only like 13% of people between the ages of, I think it was 21 and 27 actually have a dining room table to sit at.
Wow.
Yeah, it was something crazy like that.
Yeah.
So,
and when you walk when you walk out to the grocery store or anywhere in the community, and to think of that demographic of 20-year-olds, and to wonder, do you have a place to sit?
Yeah.
Oh, the table.
Wow.
Wow. That
explains a lot of things
that
about this
explains a
generation.
lot, doesn't it?
And
Yeah, it does.
and what it sounds like, even just from Miranda, she didn't say this, but it's almost a choice. It was like, it's like, she's like, yeah, me and my friends, like, we'll cook dinner, and then we'll just stand in the kitchen and eat together, and then we'll just run out and do our thing. It's almost like a choice that they don't have a table, or they,
or maybe the logic is missing. I don't know. Like the value for lost. Yeah.
And that's huge.
Wow.
I think
That's scary.
It's the value of what the table brings and what the table represents has been lost. Because I know even growing up, like, we would sit around the table. It wasn't a regular thing, but like definitely at, like, we go to grandma's house and we had big events, stuff like that, we would sit around the table. But at home, it wasn't sacred. It wasn't a place where there were no sacred times around the table. It was all just come and eat. And doing the community table, and it's like, and doing our Seder dinner, it's like, there are times when this table is very sacred and holy, and actually, quite honestly, it should be that way all the time, and we don't do that. We don't take the time to do that. That this is a place where, like you said, life happens and joy happens, value happens, connection happens, and seeing it as such is missing.
Yeah, for me, I can't ever help but think when you ask that question, the first word that always comes to my mind is invitation. Yeah. What is the table to you? It's invitation. Invitation. For all those things that you talked about, Carolyn, and so much more, but we miss the invitation, similar to the story you guys shared about the Germans and how they didn't understand the invitation. No idea what you were inviting them into. They were like, what is this? What is this? No value for that, because they just didn't know. And good point. But we know, don't we? Yeah, we know. And those that have been to our tables know that there's high value there, such a gift to be given and received at the table. Together. It's for everyone. It's for the hosts, and it's for those that come, that everyone receives. So yeah, it's awesome. Which is why whatever the Lord is doing and why he's reawakening the table, I think it has a lot to do with that. Has a lot to do with that. So Richard, how about for you? What is the table to you?
Well, of course, many of the things that Carolyn said. I think acceptance and belonging, laughter, jokes sometimes.
Bad jokes.
Bad jokes. Dad jokes.
I was going to say, Richard's got some dad jokes. I know that.
That's what our grandkids, they'll go, bad joke.
Which just makes you laugh all the more, doesn't it, Richard?
And keep doing it.
Unfortunately.
Anything else?
It's special, just being with family and grounded, I guess you could say, even.
I love that.
I would add creative, because we have a lot of artistic people in our family. Okay. And so we always do art projects when our grandchildren come over, or when we go to their houses. We almost always do an art project. And so, that's what we do at the table.
With another thing, creative and musical, it's kind of funny on a Jewish table, when we have we'll probably do it here in just a little bit, our Shabbat meal, we have the blessings with all the songs and so forth. Yes. So we get some of the silverware, and we'll like get a beat going, with on the table and with the glasses and everything. And so everybody's got something going. And then we're singing the songs with the harmonies and everything, and carrying, and then just laughing and having fun. So
it's orchestra. Great. The table also means the Shabbat orchestra.
It's the Shabbat orchestra, right?
With plates, spoons, and
I love that. So you guys are actually walking into Shabbat right now. So when we finish this up tonight, you're gonna move into that space. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
What a beautiful
That's
gift.
beautiful.
Cannot wait to join you guys at your table one day.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And the invitation is there.
Yes.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you for your time. Thank you. This has been great. I love your stories. I always love your stories. And I love just listening and just being with you guys.
You guys are a gift to us.
We love to be.
We miss you guys.
Yeah, we love to be with
Miss
you
you too.
Yeah.
Miss you too. Well, as they say next time in Jerusalem.
Yeah. Lashana Haba'a Be'Yerushalayim. Next year in Jerusalem.
You've been listening to the Table and Well podcast. New episodes stream every Tuesday. To begin your journey to relational health, please go to tableandwellco.com and join our new online community. Or you can sign up for Connections 101, formerly called Community 101. Again, we invite you to join our online community at tableandwellco.com.